Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 116. Abandoned World. Part 1. I was guided by the judge towards the exit of the underworld. The exact location wasn't known because I was wearing a special eye patch. We seemed to go up and then down. After a long walk, the judge took off my eye patch. Follow along this path. I opened my eyes and saw a dark and narrow road. Perhaps this was the exit that didn't require going through Sharon, the ferryman. You should look in front. What does that mean? I looked around, but the judge had already disappeared. I had no choice but to start walking along this path. The light faded and darkness settled around me. It was initially possible for me to determine the direction using the walls, but the walls soon disappeared. The place I relied on disappeared, and I felt like a ship floating on the ocean without buoys. The myth of Orpheus suddenly popped into my head. What would happen if I looked back? Then a faint light appeared in the darkness. You are afraid of what is behind you. That's why you are a pitiful child. It was a message from Persephone. Keep this in mind. In order to find the front, you must know where the back is. It is because the front can only exist when there is a rear. Speaking of which, the judge had said something similar. However, just because I heard plausible words didn't mean I suddenly gained enlightenment and could make enormous changes. It looks like you need some motivation. The stream of light in the air stretched out like it was hesitating. Okay. I can't bring you to the beginning of the world labyrinth, but this much should be possible. I suddenly felt something. The string of light disappeared and a small firefly appeared in front of me. It was a distant light. It was a very fragile and shimmering light. Nobody told me anything, but I knew what this light was. You. It was Xing Yusung of the 41st regression. I could tell how long she had been waiting just from her voice. If she was already at the beginning of the world labyrinth, then the concept of time would be different. It wasn't long by my standards, but it might have already been a few years for Xing Yusung. The small light shivered a few times before speaking in a hesitant voice. A juicy. Perhaps she was influenced by the memories of the young Xing Yusung. See, can I call you that? No. The way she called me was a bond. It was a wish to be tied somewhere. Perhaps a juicy was the last lingering attachment of the 41st round Xing Yusung. I smiled softly. You are currently older than me. Is it still okay? The soft light once again trembled. The light gently touched my face. There was warmth in that gesture. My heart felt pained. She must have been waiting for a long time. Even so, this child had to wait longer. I'm sorry, but I can't save you now. The light moved up and down like she understood. Don't overdo it. My story now. It isn't over yet. I spoke without giving her time to finish. You have suffered for so long and it can't end like this. Why? I will never let that happen. The light stared at me. She trembled in a confused and pathetic manner. I got to know Ajusi through the memories of this world. But Ajusi, why are you so good to me? Does Ajusi know me? I didn't answer. We got to know each other through different means. Just as the 41st round Xing Yusung knew me through the memories of her younger self, I knew her through ways of survival. Nevertheless, I couldn't explain this. I feel strange. I definitely don't know Ajusi, but when I'm with you, I feel like I understand everything about you. As if you are a god. If I was really a god, then I would be the most incompetent god in the world. The most helpless god in the world who knew everything but couldn't explain anything. Xing Yusung's light was rapidly fading away. I couldn't see her, but I seemed to know what she looked like. Please save me, please. I will. The tail of the light shaking in the air became smaller and I reached out towards the light. I felt like my heart had been imprisoned. I could feel Xing Yusung's despair. The long wait. My heart ached with an indescribable grief. Little by little, Persephone's words made sense. There must be something behind in order to go ahead. This was my back and at the same time, the front that I had to face. Maybe this was how Yu Jongguk felt. He constantly returned to the past, but was only able to move forward. The moment I was certain of my direction, the environment stabilized. A string of light appeared in the scattered darkness. I held her for a while with my power, but you don't have much time left if you want to save her. I remembered the faint warmth of Shin Yu-sung. Persephone continued speaking. Please keep this in mind. Humans are stories. By the time you get her back, no one knows how much of her story will remain. After that, I was pulled towards somewhere. The cries of ghosts receded and the sensations of my body returned one by one. I could feel the warm sunlight on my eyelids. I felt a dampness and opened my eyes to see a familiar face. A Juicy? The young Shin Yu-sung was watching me. The child's clear eyes reassured me. The wildly beating heart slowly subsided. I had returned. I breathed slowly and the muscles of my body regained their function. The hidden scenario, Queen of the Underworld, has ended. You have earned 15,000 coins as an achievement reward. The compensation for the updated scenario was also received. The Dakibi had done his job properly. The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy congratulates you on your safe return. I saw the indirect message and my anger belatedly soared. This bastard Dionysus, I wouldn't have to go through all this trouble if he hadn't placed me in Tartarus. I was stuck in Tartarus with Kim Namwon and almost had to spend the rest of my life making the Gundam. The constellation God of Wine and Ecstasy is asking you for reconciliation. 7,942 coins have been sponsored. 7,942? What was this pig-like apology? Well, I'll let it go since he still gave me coins. There is one new hidden scenario. I immediately confirmed the newly arrived hidden scenario. Plus. Hidden scenario, Snake Hunt, category, hidden. Difficulty, S. Clear conditions, hunt the target in the 6th main scenario area. Time limit, until the end of the main scenario. Compensation, 80,000 coins, the trust of the Queen of the Darkest Spring. Failure, no access to the underworld. Plus. As expected, Persephone's task was presented in the form of a hidden scenario. Once the target gets close, the scenario alarm will be automatically triggered. A snake hunt. The target of the scenario wasn't specified, but I guessed the snake would appear in the next scenario. I slowly raised my upper body and Shin Yu-sung asked anxiously, "A Juicy, are you okay?" "Yes. I'm fine. Senga Uni asked me to watch you." It reminded me of what I told you Senga before I collapsed. Yusenga SSI? It wasn't difficult to find Yusenga. Yusenga was curled up on the ground and fast asleep. I looked at her sleeping face and recalled Persephone's image. Then my face became hot. By the way, the Chinese dress and garter belt, it was really great. Uni fell asleep just before you woke up. Ah. She told me to tell the others if you didn't wake up. The series of words ignited guilt inside me. I could see dark circles under Yusenga's eyes. She must have a hangover as well. Chinese dress? Garter belt? Shit, I was garbage. Are you awake now? Yong Hee-won and Lee Hyun-sung approached me. They were covered in sweat and seemed to have come back from a morning spar. Yong Hee-won told me. Dr. SSI is awake, so we are ready to go. Ready? The other people have already started. Come to think of it, there weren't as many people around as there were yesterday. I asked, what happened overnight? The announcement of the 6th scenario came. Already? I didn't have a chance to ask when a huge string of words appeared in the sky. Survivors are advised to gather in Yongsan Station. We packed up and left. We were originally in Yongsan, so it wasn't hard to go to the station. I carried Yusenga while Yong Hee-won and Lee Hyun-sung were responsible for the remaining luggage. Lee Gil-young and Shin Yu-sung followed us while standing far apart from each other. I didn't know where Yu Jonghyuk's party had gone. We soon arrived near the station, which was already crowded with survivors. I couldn't believe there were still so many people who survived in Seoul. Everyone was watching the huge screen floating in the air. Ah? This place? The party members and I looked up at the screen together. It was the same screen I had seen in the underworld. It was a lush forest and monsters were running around the forest. They were clearly scary monsters, but they looked like they were part of a giant ecosystem. The appearance of incarnations was also seen. Some of the people who had started hunting laughed as they cut off the head of a monster. These dakibis. They edited it well, like it was a tourist destination. Someone spoke. Eh? Aren't they Japanese? If I remembered correctly, the sixth scenario was an event scenario with another dome. The man who appeared on the screen was Izumi, a famous incarnation of Japan. The Tokyo Dome was faster than us, so they would have reached the sixth scenario earlier. In many ways, it could be said that South Korea had a relatively unfavorable start. A new main scenario has arrived. Chapter 117. Abandoned World. Part 2. Along with the message, the contents of the scenario emerged in my head. Plus. Main scenario number 6? Category, Main. Difficulty? Clear conditions? Time limit? Compensation? Failure? Plus. A? There isn't a difficulty level or clear conditions. What the hell do they want us to do? Why is everything question marks? The confused people summoned the window several times, but the contents of the scenario were still covered with question marks. I wasn't surprised, because I already expected this. It was because this scenario can only be done by a few people. A tall, middle-aged man standing near me declared. You. It has been a while, Kim Dokjanim. This is the first time I am greeting you formally. This Ajusi was here as well. I wanted to speak, but the man asked me to shake hands first. I am John Ildo, and I'm called the Neutral King. I am Kim Dokja. The Neutral King, John Ildo. He was one of the few kings remaining in Seoul who survived the absolute throne struggle, along with the Mithriya King Cha Saengkyung and the King of Beauty Min Jaiwan. I had an impressive memory of John Ildo. He was the only king who gave up the throne of his own will. During the struggle for the throne, and this time as well. I was very impressed with Dokjanim's performance. You don't know how much my sponsor talks about Dokjanim. Half the time it is about Dokjanim. He gave a good-looking smile. That reminded me, who was his sponsor? I immediately used a skill. The exclusive skill, character list, is activated. It was a summary list that only contained the attribute and sponsor. The settings of the summary list have been changed. Plus. Character list summary, name, John Ildo. Private attribute, clumsy intellectual, general, the neutral king, hero, sponsor, expert at sitting on the fence. Plus. Now that I saw it, I had a question. Of course it would be this constellation. Expert at playing both sides seemed to be an old-fashioned person with complicated internal relations, but it was actually the modifier of a king. A constellation who advocates neutral diplomacy has revealed his modifier. The constellation expert at playing both sides shows good intentions towards you. It was the modifier for Gwanghagin, a king of Joseon famous for his neutral diplomacy. John Ildo had the title of neutral king for a reason. I said to him, I want to hear your story a bit more. What do you mean by only some people can carry out the scenario? Ah, you didn't know. The kings had quickly obtained information. Of course, I knew it the best, but I still needed to listen to them. Maybe things were different from the ways of survival that I knew. According to information provided by the low-grade Dakibis this morning, the participants of this scenario will be decided from volunteers. Volunteers? Yes. This scenario doesn't require everyone to participate. There is also no penalty for not participating. It is incredible, considering the scenarios we've experienced so far. It was like what I expected. I pointed at the screen and asked, "Will the participants be going there?" That's what I heard. I could hear relieved voices all over the place after John Ildo's words. What? Not all of us has to go? Shit, I'm glad. I saw those monsters. Why are they so big? At this point, the incarnations were divided into 3 broad categories. First, there was the type that furtively watched. Most of them didn't have an affiliation and probably thought they could survive by hiding. However, this idea was wrong. All scenarios in the star stream increased exponentially in difficulty from a certain point in time. Perhaps these incarnations would face a terrible future in exchange for not participating in the scenario. Isn't it interesting? Then there was the second category. They had somewhat adapted to the harsh environment of the scenario. People strengthened their resolve by looking at the screen or checking their equipment in advance. Maybe they would be able to survive in the meantime. Finally, the third category. John Ildonim. Where are you? There was a shout from outside the crowd. John Ildo looked at his watch and groaned. The time has already come. You can go. I'm fine. No, I can't go alone. It doesn't make sense. What do you mean? Doc Janim, I actually came here to find you. Find me? John Ildo nodded. A world without kings. He looked around. It was only a moment, but it felt like many people's gazes were focused here. John Ildo gave a mysterious smile as if he noticed the gazes. The kings left in this unfortunate world are waiting for you to come. This was the third category. They were the people who used others in order to survive. I followed John Ildo to the king's gathering place. They gathered at the central platform of Yongsan Station and the meeting room was covered by a big tent. There were dozens of guards around the tent. Every one of them were formidable. They were the elite troops of the kings. They were probably hunting the monsters in other areas while we were fighting Shin Yusung. I'm sorry, but only the kings can go inside. The sentries stopped us, and I looked back at my party members. Yong Hee-won and Lee Hyun-sung understood the situation and nodded. I left Yusanga with Lee Hyun-sung. Doc Jesasai. Scream if anything happens. Understood? Yong Hee-won told me. I smiled at her and opened the door of the tent. Sound wave blocking is activated in the area. They even had sound wave blocking? There seemed to be a pretty good assortment of people. I walked in and saw a round table in the wide space. There were a few biscuits and beef jerky on the table. The chairs that people were sitting in were different. Some were plastic chairs, some were wooden chairs, and there was even a sofa. Still, no matter where they sat, it was definitely a throne. The surviving kings were here. You said that our group has an advantage? South Korea will be a latecomer. Do you think we can deal with those who are already present? However, it will be different if our group goes. I will go. The booming voice of the middle-aged man faded away at my appearance. All the kings were staring at me. The last king has come. King of Beauty, Min Jae-won stated. I lightly greeted her and looked around at the kings. There was no Yu Jong-hyuk. Well, it was obvious. Apart from me, there were a total of 5 people present. King of Beauty, Min Jae-won. The Maitreya King, Cha Sang-kyung. The Neutral King, John Ildo. The King of Wanderers. This was 4 people and the remaining person. It was strange. I didn't know him? Who is this person? I am Kim Dokja. Oh, you are, I am the president of Uido, Yu Hyunho. Uido's president? The president already died. What was this bullshit? Min Jae-won added in a sour voice. Yu Hyunho SSI isn't a king, but he leads a large force. That's why he is here. What king? Do you really think this is the Joseon dynasty? We are living in the era of a democracy. Please wake up. I quietly activated character list. Plus. Character list summary, name, Yu Hyanho. Private attribute, corrupt politician, rare. Sponsor, master of manipulating state affairs. Exclusive skills, bribery LV5, military command LV4, corrupt power LV6, control of the masses LV7. Plus. I suddenly remembered. A politician who survived the first scenario. There had clearly been such a person in several regressions. Usually Uedo was erased during the monster flood, so he was lucky this time. The constellation Maritime War God is angry with the corrupt officials of Joseon. The constellation Bald General of Justice hates the incarnation Yu Hyanho. These messages probably had something to do with Yu Hyanho's sponsor. A master of manipulating state affairs who lived during the Joseon period. I would have been able to ask Yu Sang that if she was here. This person called Lee Suk-young is attending for a similar reason. I don't know if you've heard, but she is called the King of Wanderers. The King of Wanderers looked at me. She was still wearing a mask. I stared at the mask for a moment before turning my head to the left. Please stop the introductions. I would like to know why you called me. John Ildo, sitting at the center of the table, spoke after hearing my words. We are here to select the representatives who will participate in the sixth scenario. This was their purpose. Yu Hyanho spoke after John Ildo. The people gathered here are those with the greatest forces in Seoul Dome at present. Kim Dokja SSI is relatively small, but you received the great honor of a special invitation due to your contribution to the scenario. Ah, is that so? Special? Honor? What a ridiculous guy. He hid somewhere while I cleared the scenario. Now he wanted to say these words? Yu Hyanho looked around and kept speaking. Once again, it is time for us to escape from the barbarians. For a while, we went back to the primitive era and repeated the struggle of society. However, our essence is that of citizens who act according to strict social contracts. Then wouldn't it be better to pick the next scenario participants using the democratic process? It was a dog barking, but it sounded plausible because he mixed in several plausible words. Min Jaiwan replied, "What democratic process are you talking about?" Like I said before, I think it is right to allocate the participants according to the size of the force. John Ildo immediately retorted. I know that Uedo's group is the greatest simply looking at numbers. That proposal isn't fair. John Ildo SSI, I am saddened by your words. Aren't we all Koreans? It doesn't matter if a certain amount of people from a particular group is selected. Once we enter the scenario, we will be facing foreign opponents. Then the group we belong to won't matter. Are we going to fight each other when the enemy is in front of us? He truly was a politician, but John Ildo wasn't that easy. If it doesn't matter who is picked, then there isn't a reason to pick from your group. According to the democratic process, we have many powerful people. I became annoyed when I heard it. We are here to talk about this? I don't know why we are picking people in the first place. Just send everyone who wants to go. We originally thought like that, but things changed. Changed? Min Jaiwan nodded. The scenario has a limited quota. Limited? The kings received a message from the Dakibis, but you must not have received it yet. At this moment, a system message flashed in my head. Seoul Dome's initial allocation is 10 people. Additional numbers will be decided depending on the incarnations in the scenario. Oh, this was why they were fighting. Unlike the other incarnations, the kings knew that an early preemption of the scenario was important. If they could put their own forces into the initial quota, then they thought the initiative of future scenarios would come to their group. In the end, this place was set up as a fight to take away the king's seats. My group will go. I heard there are a lot of Japanese people in the scenario area. I think it is right for me to take the lead as a descendant of Silla. No, I will go. Beach had many exchanges with Japan since ancient times. That's Beach. Your sponsor is from later Beach. What does that mean? Of course I have to go. How can I believe in your antiquated sponsor? Everyone, wait a minute. Please calm down. John Ildo came forward but couldn't calm down the confusion. I looked around with a sigh and saw the King of Wanderers. She was watching me without saying a word. I could see a slight smile below her half-mask. I had to settle this. The arguing kings had a fierce atmosphere, like there was going to be bloodshed. There is no use in us arguing here. The kings looked at me the moment I said these words. Yu Hyanho's eyes were saying, "What do you mean by that?" I could feel the faint vibration of the ground and picked up a biscuit on the table. Now he was coming. Why did he always show up late? The last king hasn't come yet. The moment I broke the biscuit, one side of the tent exploded and the self-styled president of Uido fell down with a scream. Quack! A person appeared behind Yu Hyanho. I moved through a hole in the tent and I saw dozens of collapsed guards behind him. This was our regressor. His temper was the same, no matter the regression. The peculiar ferocious eyes swept through the group and soon focused on me. King. Some of the kings groaned. Then the king, Yu Jonghyuk, opened his mouth. I will announce the people who will participate in the next scenario. Chapter 118. Abandoned World. Part 3. There was no room for disagreement. For him, the representative selection wasn't a subject of discussion, but a presentation. Speak now if you have a complaint. There was no way to express dissatisfaction towards such a fearsome killing intent. The kings knew Yu Jonghyuk's strength and trembled without even thinking about rebellion. Except for one person. Get lost. Move your feet. Unfortunately, the self-styled president of Uido had never heard about the Supreme King. A politician was insensitive to rumors. Why did you suddenly appear? Kwajik. Kwakak. Yu Hyanho screamed as his hand was crushed. My hand. My hand. Kwajijik. Kwakak. Bodyguards. Where are my bodyguards? Yu Hyanho struggled for help, but there was no one here who could help him. Yu Jonghyuk's feet pressed against his back and soon after, Yu Hyanho found it hard to breathe and passed out. Once everything became calm, Yu Jonghyuk opened his mouth. I didn't think so. Then I will announce the roster. The faces of the kings became tense. Yu Jonghyuk truly was great. Taking the reins of power so easily. The kings quickly fell from the picking position to being picked. I grabbed a beef jerky from the table and waited for Yu Jonghyuk's words. Min Jaiwan stared blankly from next to me. How can you be so calm? I'm sorry, but I was in a different situation from them. It was because I was someone Yu Jonghyuk recognized as a companion. He threatened me by saying that the oath was over, but he did acknowledge me. Yu Jonghyuk opened his mouth. The first one will naturally be me. Well, it was obvious. How could he not be on a list created by himself? Behind Yu Jonghyuk, the rest of his party members had appeared. Lee Jaihai and Lee Seolwa. Lee Hyunsung and Young Hee-won also looked inside with anxious eyes. In particular, Young Hee-won was about to jump inside and I stopped her with my eyes. Yu Jonghyuk continued. The second person will be Lee Jaihai. I thought the second one would be me, so I was naturally surprised. Well, I originally wasn't his companion, so his other party members might be disturbed if he called me first. He might look cold, but he looked after his people. I could understand that heart. Lee Jaihai couldn't hide her joy as she smiled at me. Still, it was a bit annoying. The third is Lee Seolwa. Lee Seolwa nodded and came forward. Every time a person's name was called, the faces of the kings darkened. They all felt an ominous feeling. Yu Jonghyuk's list was a fixed list. There are 7 people remaining. We still have a chance. The Supreme King only has 3 party members. He will have to choose other people. We are the strongest among the remaining people. I could tell by their faces what they were thinking. Me? Of course, I wasn't worried. I would naturally be on the list. Maybe I would be next. The fourth one is Lee Hyunsung. What? Lee Hyunsung became pale as his name was called. Why you mean me? Yoo Jong-hyuk ignored the words and looked at the next person. The fifth is Young Hee-won. It's me? Young Hee-won's eyes widened with surprise. It was unexpected that he chose Young Hee-won over me. This bastard was picking from my party? The sixth is Lee Gil-young. Huh? Then Yoo Jong-hyuk looked at Shin Yu-sung, who was next to Lee Gil-young. Shin Yu-sung hid behind Lee Gil-young with fearful eyes. The confused Lee Gil-young was stunned for a moment, but he stood in front of Shin Yu-sung like he made a decision. Yoo Jong-hyuk looked down at the two children with an unknown look before turning his head away. Then, Yoo Jong-hyuk's eyes finally stopped on me. Yes, it was finally my turn. Did he deliberately leave me until the end? As expected from a main character, he knew how to direct a show. You can take care of the rest. I coughed on the beef jerky. Yoo Jong-hyuk looked around the tent before turning to leave, like there was no more work to be done. This was it? Really? Then what about me? Why was he looking at me like that? I belatedly chased after him, but Yoo Jong-hyuk was already gone. How long did I stand there? Young Hee-won stood in the distance and asked me carefully. Weren't the two of you friendly? I thought so. The constellation demon-like judge of fire is laughing with delight. Lee Jae-hai also added in a strange tone. Juicy, didn't you meet Master last night? I thought you would be first on the list. What do you mean? Last night, Master said he was going to see you? Last night? It was around 1 or 2 o'clock? Were you sleeping? I thought about the time. It was between 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I think it was just before I went to the underworld. I was awake at that time, but Yoo Jong-hyuk didn't come. That's strange? He definitely went to find you. He was also a bit angry when he came back. Angry? You know that look Master makes when he is angry. Like he is contemptuous of a person. I pondered on the memories of that time. What was I doing right before I went to the underworld? Ah, yes. A memory came to mind. At that time I was drinking with you Sangha. Dionysus poured alcohol and made the atmosphere strange, then, The constellation god of wine and ecstasy is making a playful expression. The constellation demon-like judge of fire is laughing with delight. 500 coins have been sponsored. I felt a bit complicated as I explained what happened. The party members looked surprised. Young Hee-won stared at me with narrowed eyes. You kissed Yoo Sangha SSI? No, that's not it. What did you hear? Was it really Dionysus? You weren't pretending to be drunk? It was because of Dionysus and nothing happened. Young Hee-won looked at me with suspicious eyes. Why was this brought up? HRMM, perhaps Yoo Jong-hyuk SSI saw it? That's why his mood is bad. Yoo Jong-hyuk isn't that type of person. Even if Yoo Jong-hyuk SSI witnessed Dokja SSI's kiss scene, I don't think there is a reason to feel angry. It wasn't a kiss. I grumbled and Lee Jae-hai exclaimed with a smile. Ah. I think I know. The constellation demon-like judge of fire says it is a comradeship. Young Hee-won cocked her head. Comradeship? Lee Jae-hai dealt a big blow. What is Uni's sponsor? They think it is just comradeship? What do you mean? Comrades, I think I understand. Lee Hyunsung unexpectedly interrupted. Come to think of it, I would also feel offended if I saw Kim Dokja doing that. The constellation demon-like judge of fire has snorted at the unexpected remark. Yes? Why would Hyunsung SSI feel bad? Lee Jae-hai looked like she was going to get a nosebleed. Lee Hyunsung's expression was serious. I was nervous about what bombshell words Lee Hyunsung would say. We are risking our lives in every scenario. Yoo Jong-hyuk SSI trains his body every morning to prepare for the following scenarios. I train severely every day to protect his comrades. Huh? Li Jihai made a strange expression at the unexpected answer. Yong Hee-won listened to Li Hyunsung's words with a doubtful expression. If a comrade is blinded by sexual desire in such a situation, then I would be in a bad mood. I would also feel betrayed. Yu Jonghyuk might not be a soldier, but he is a very austere person. Such a person would react sensitively when people aren't disciplined. It would feel like our comradeship is falling people. It makes sense. Yong Hee-won agreed. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire is disappointed with her incarnation. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire resents Lee Hyunsung's wrong comradeship. I heard Lee Hyunsung's words and thought it was true. A scene from Ways of Survival suddenly came to mind. I opened the text, searched Yu Jonghyuk's third regression and was able to find evidence. Pathetic person. You sell yourself to women with one glance. Those with strong sexual desires are excluded from my list of comrades. It is easy for them to make mistakes. It was really unfair if Yu Jonghyuk had actually misunderstood me. It wasn't even a kiss. Damn, I couldn't tell him it was a misunderstanding now. Kim Dokja SSI? We want to pick the rest of the people. Min Jaiwon suddenly approached me. I looked back and saw the other kings watching me. The Supreme King picked 6 people and there are 4 spots remaining. We have to pick 4. Uido's group had already been destroyed and now there were 5 kings remaining. The Maitreya King Cha Sangkyung noticed and opened his mouth first. There are only 4 spots and the remaining people are. Why don't we decide it with a match? I was the one who gave the opinion. We will just be wasting time arguing among ourselves. Everyone wants to fill the spots with their own forces, so let's fight. The king who wins will decide the remaining spots. The kings glanced at each other at my words. A moment later, the reply was heard. Okay. Once again, the neutral king declared that he would abstain. I'll stay behind. Someone should stay here and lead the people. It was a wise choice. If they couldn't get ahead in the scenario, then it wasn't bad to build a power base here. In addition, people didn't know it yet, but there was a scenario for the incarnations left behind. The Dakibi who loved strong stimuli couldn't let the incarnations live peacefully. The King of Wanderers also raised her hand to express her intention to abstain. The other kings seemed surprised, but thought I was fortunate that their competitors had reduced. Min Jaiwon looked at me and declared confidently. The same method as before won't work. Maybe she knew that I won the absolute throne with my stockpile of coins. Did I seem that shallow? We exchanged blows. It took less than 5 minutes before the match was over. Who won? There was no need to ask. No way. I thought only the Supreme King was a monster. How did you become so strong? Cha Sangkyung was bloody while Min Jaiwon gasped as she spoke. Yes, it would have been easier if I had done this from the beginning. I shrugged and stated, the initial quota is 10 people, so everyone should wait. The second round will start soon. You use every means. Who will you take with you? One will be me, and she will be the other person. Shin Yusung's eyes brightened at my words. She had been worried about being left alone. The remaining 2 are. I am thinking of someone. It isn't me? Yes, it isn't Min Jaiwon SSI. Che. I see. Min Jaiwon got up from the dusty ground. The depressed kings left their spots, one by one. I gave a command to my party members. Please leave first. I need to do something. Meet me in front of the station later. The party members nodded and left the tent, the crowded interior becoming empty in an instant. After a bit more time, only one person besides me was left in the tent. It was a masked woman. Then her mouth opened for the first time. It seems like you have many friends. I hesitated to the last moment. I didn't want to talk to this person. However, I needed to ask her for help to get the person I needed in the next scenario. I took a deep breath before saying to the King of Wanderers. It has been a long time, Mother.